Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session on performance management. And I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Cindy Carpenter has over 25 years of business and training experience, primarily focused on human resource and people topics. And to complement her training background, she has been a practicing human resource professional in the banking, insurance, and manufacturing industries, as well as owning her own business, Carpenter Business Resources, LLC. Cindy is an adjunct faculty member at Flathead Valley Community College through the Continuing Education Center, and she is a current member and past board member of the Flathead Valley chapter of the Society for Human Resource Management. So welcome, Cindy. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to talk about this topic, sort of. It's a tough one, and not everybody likes it, but we'll go through and have some discussion. I will say that if you came today hoping that we would blow the doors off and the roof off and you'd walk away with all kinds of really, this is the latest and greatest. I can't offer that because performance management is pretty individualized and it's pretty flex and everybody stabs at it and tries, and some more successful than others. But what I do hope you go away with are maybe some ideas for your own situation, your own department, your own, within the state realm, some ideas that will help you make that process just a little bit better or clearer or more meaningful for you and for your employees. So one of the things I like to ask you and start with, and again, I should probably stop right away and say, feel free to chat, but you feel free to interrupt me if you have a question. I'm okay with that. I get to going and I don't necessarily always watch the chat, so I'm counting on the ladies to help me do that. But one of the things I'd ask you about is, what's your goal with performance management? Most of us roll our eyes and moan and groan, both as the employee who's receiving some sort of feedback and as the manager who has to do the feedback or provide the feedback. And every year we have great intentions of making it a better year and everybody's going to be happy and we're going to do a better job and make this exercise meaningful. And oftentimes we walk away and think, geez, it just didn't nail it for me and it didn't motivate me. And I don't know if it motivated my employees and so forth and so on. So what's your goal? Are you really hoping that as the manager or leader that you can help train your employees, that you're coaching them, that you're developing them? Or is your goal just, I got to keep them? Because that's a big deal anymore, right? Retention is a huge key. Is it that we need to do a better job? I need to be more accurate. Our production needs to be better. I need to get more out of every employee and every hour that they're with me. Or is it all of the above? And maybe when you look at that and you ask that question of yourself, you're going, well, I think I do pretty well at this, but I'm not sure about this, or God, I fail at this, whatever. So you have to think about what your goals are and then look at your existing framework, whatever it might be, good, bad, or indifferent, and say, well, how is this helping me to achieve the goals that I want for performance management? We're going to talk about a lot of different things in 2 hours, and that's good. And you may even have more things to talk about, and I'm happy to walk down that path if you do have a question or a thought or a comment. We can't start any training without having, I guess, the more official definition, and that's what's on the screen here, that ongoing process, right? That managers and employees regularly communicate and assess what that job is, what the responsibilities and duties are, what's the expectation of the employee in the role that they're filling, how are they doing it, what's their performance, and what's the strategy for moving forward. So again, as you all know, there's textbook stuff and then there's what we live with in the real world, and oftentimes they're not really very close. Let's see if I'm smart enough to get my screen. Okay, so what do I think it is? I guess I'm going to say to you that I think performance management is allowing employees to perform at their best, making sure that the efforts that they have are aligned with whatever your company strategy, your goals are, your mission, your vision, your values, and ultimately creating that positive, fulfilling work environment. And that's culture, right? And when I say positive and fulfilling, I'm not just talking about for the employee, I'm talking about for you and for the organization as a whole. Because ultimately, in this day and age, we really do need to retain our good employees. It's a fair statement, and you'll all think it, and maybe you don't say it, but there are some you wish would go, and there are some that you wish would stay, right? And we really do want to make sure that those that we want to stay are as embraced and engaged as we are. And part of that is performance management. It's the whole experience of your work environment, it's your work life. It's way more than that annual performance review. And it's key here. It's not only what you measure, but it's how you measure it. And sometimes we hit it out of the park on both of those, and other times we miss it on both of those, right? Sometimes it's easy to measure. It's a quantifiable, you created this many widgets, and that's our goal. But oftentimes, how we talk about that success makes a difference in how effective the performance management system really is. I also want to point out that it's every employee's accountability. That's part of performance management. So, we could spend days talking about the change in the workforce. Years ago, when I first went to work, I would have done anything that they said to do. I wouldn't have questioned it. I would have never said it's not my job. But the workforce has changed, and probably for the better. So employees will question what we ask them to do. They will question the validity of a task or a responsibility, oftentimes to the point where it could drive us crazy. But bottom line is, every employee comes to work for an organization, and in order to do their part to help make sure that that organization meets its goals, whatever they might be. And we need to remember that that's that accountability piece that works both ways. And we shouldn't be ashamed to say, hey, this is what it is. It's really day in, day out, the operational things that go on in your organization. It's about the health and welfare and safety of not only the company, but the employees. It's about setting some standards and goals, obviously. It's about tracking progress. And very rarely is that a straight line. That's been my experience. Again, textbook will tell you, oh, if you do this, 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 and this, oh yeah, we're good. Everything's just rosy. But we all know in the real world, it never works like that. Even our star employees have bad days or go through bad life crises or whatever it is, and they may fall off that perch, or you have somebody who hasn't done well and you think they're not going to make it, and pretty soon they rise up and they really become a superstar. So it's very rarely a straight line under performance management. But then we're very rarely a straight line in anything we do in the business world anymore. So that kind of goes with the standard, if you will. Performance management ultimately is about giving feedback, the good and the tough, on a regular basis. And I'm being a smart aleck here. I'll be careful and say, oh, that's communication, right? You know all of this, but we sometimes think of performance management as, oh, it's the dreaded annual performance review. So let's just look at the slide for a sec, and let's kind of talk about the difference, because we use the terminology, we interchange it all the time. And it really is, two different pieces of the same puzzle. Performance management is ongoing versus a performance appraisal or an evaluation, which you already know is something annual, semi-annual, whatever you do, within your specific organizations. But there's a difference too in what they achieve. So performance management, again, 40,000-foot level here. It's about aligning goals, making sure employees are developing, they're growing, that they're achieving the skill sets that they need. Whereas a performance appraisal typically, as you know, looks backwards. Oftentimes, almost the entire performance appraisal is about what you did in the last year. A performance management concept is more collaborative. So that's where you're working with your employees ongoing. You're having those conversations frequently. You're saying, okay, what do you think? How do we get from point A to point B? Or if someone's not doing as well as you'd like them to do, you're probably sitting down and saying, hey, we're missing our production standard here, or we didn't do well on this. What do you think it is? Do you need training? Is there something we can do to help you? Again, pretty collaborative approach in performance management. The performance appraisal is typically more formal. When I was just mentioning collaboration, oftentimes those are quick 5-minute conversations, right? It might just be a pulse check, whereas that appraisal is that document that we all know that the HR people want or management wants. And I'm the HR person, so I'm the one that's going to scream documentation over and over here. But the two work hand in hand. There's a focus on performance management. It's about more future thinking versus that performance appraisal is more past thinking. And ultimately, the outcome, performance management is how we live. Think of it that way, right? It ebbs and flows, but it typically is about moving forward, thinking future, growth, acquiring skill sets, making sure those skill sets fit with the role or the goals or the strategy. Whereas that performance appraisal, again, is that dreaded document that nobody likes to write up, okay? Just a good chart so that we can keep the terminology in place. When I think of the things, and again, for many of you on this call, you've probably been doing this a long time and you feel pretty comfortable with what you're doing, and you've gone through what we talked about before we started the presentation about, most of what I do, I learned from the seat of my pants or from experience. I don't know that I had any specific training when I went into some sort of a leadership role. So when I think of this slide, I think this slide is a great reminder, but also for those of you that may be newer to the role, this might be some foundation for you to think about as you start to work with the management of other employees. And this is important because many times we promote from within. We promote somebody who's done a really good job at what they were doing. And then we say, well, the next step up, if you want to grow in your career here, is to be a leader of people. And they get some sort of supervisory responsibilities. And guess what? We're not necessarily prepared for that. Oftentimes, that's the most difficult role you can fill. You were friends with these people, you were peers with them, and now suddenly you are overseeing their performance, and you're having to give feedback that may or may not always be the most positive. You may be even involved, and I'm not sure about the state and how it works necessarily, but you may also be involved in recommendations for promotions or pay increases, things like that. So you suddenly hold a whole lot of power, if you will, and we don't necessarily prepare people in the best way for that. And I remember myself when I first became a supervisor and I thought I knew what I was doing, but oftentimes my tongue tripped up and the words didn't come out right, and I didn't know how to say what I wanted to say, or I hesitated to say anything when I probably should have spoken up quickly. So here's just some key considerations for you. When we're talking about performance goals, they're personal to us individually, but they should always reflect the values and the strategic vision of your organization. Whatever that mission is, whatever it is, whether it's, the best customer service or producing the most widgets or whatever it is, all of the performance goals that we set for our independent employees and even for ourselves should reflect the same values. Managed performance should tie into the employee's job description, which again, in turn, aligns with values, visions, and goals. So I recognize that you all have job descriptions and that there's probably a format that you're most likely sharing And again, that's exactly fine. But if that job description doesn't reflect what the position is, not the person, but what the position is, then how can you evaluate the person who fills the position effectively? Okay, we have a tendency to do job descriptions because, again, that's what HR said we should do, and they're worthless half the time. And I'm not suggesting yours are because I don't know, but I am suggesting that you should take a look at them and make sure that they are up to date. Like everything else in business, they change. And the culture changes and the goals change slightly and the technology changes all the time. And so those descriptions really need to be updated. They should not be so specific that you pigeonhole people, but they should be able to paint a picture. And I have just an example of one we'll look at shortly. If you're not sure if your performance management process is successful, or if you think overall it's pretty good, but something feels a little flat, perhaps go back to that job description and identify whether or not it really effectively provides an image of what this employee is supposed to be doing. Because when you do performance management, it's tied to those duties, to how that person and what they do factors into the overarching goals. Okay, it's really a document that we should use. I always say this about the employee handbook, and people laugh. This is not the document to prop up your computer monitor or hold the door open. Your employee handbook is a document that you should use as guidance. The employee job description is a document that you can use to help you guide the foundation of performance management. So again, a little bit soapboxy there, but I think it's important to talk about. Feedback is essential. We know that we all want it, even when we say we don't, we do. And without the feedback, it's somewhat left to the imagination of your team. And sometimes that's truly enlightening, and sometimes it's truly disastrous. We all know that the grapevine works as the most effective communication tool in our organization, despite the fact that we hate it, right? So when we don't provide feedback to our staff, and this is not only about performance, but in general, to the degree that we can, then they come up with their own ideas. And I guarantee at some time in the course of your leadership role that someone has left your company based on what they thought was going to happen that didn't happen. And when you lose a really good employee because they think that there's a problem, or they think that something's changing, or they're not comfortable with the changes because they don't understand them, but nobody came forth, even though we expect them to come to you and say, well, hey, I don't get it. That feedback is part of the performance management process. Okay, so we all know we want it. I mean, don't you want to know? I use this example a lot when I do training. I worked for an organization out of the Flathead Valley as the head of their HR department for 6.5 years. I had roughly 1,000 employees, and I had employees across the United States and Puerto Rico. So they were way ahead of the remote game in those days. And I had 7 different bosses in 6.5 years. And of those 7 different bosses, 5 of them lived outside of the state of Montana. So when I saw them, it was usually like this, on a Zoom call or a phone call or a lot of email. They were a big email company because of the fact that they were remote. I had, I think, 2 performance reviews in 6.5 years. Now, I was the head of HR, so I was part of a senior administrative team. And so you first think, well, do you really need to have a performance evaluation, Cindy? Well, probably not. I get what HR is supposed to do, but feedback from these people would have been really, really nice. And then many of them were incredibly knowledgeable and talented and had a different background than I'd ever worked with. And I would have loved to have learned from them. So no matter what level you are, that example highlights, don't you want to know? So your employees do want to know, and they want feedback, not just at that dreaded, 25-minute annual performance review. However, that being said, it's up to all of you to decide what works best for you and your organization and your staffing. Okay. Again, I can't rewrite the book here. What I can do is hopefully give you a moment of, oh yeah, maybe I should think about this kind of environment. So performance standards can be looked at in a number of different ways, but overall they're expectations, right? Behaviors and results. Behaviors being what you want the employee to do, and results is what do you want them to produce or deliver. Most of you have seen the SMART acronym, but for those of you who are just starting out, or even for those who are very experienced, if something doesn't feel quite right in what's going on in your performance management process, go back to that job description that I harped on and do this little acronym. I mean, ask yourself if what you're asking your employees to do meets within these standards. Can you identify what's specific, right? What's measurable? Is it measurable? What's realistically achievable? What's relevant? Sometimes that's one of the problems with what we ask our employees to do, and it's what clouds the performance management processes. They're still doing things that they probably don't need to do. I and you all know this happens, and you probably can think of something you did or someone else did. Is technology takes us everywhere, but we still have people who don't trust it, so they're manually doing a process, and they pull out their little books and their papers in this file, and they manually double check things all the time, and again, we know that technology fails from time to time, but the reality is it's here, and think of AI as the next generation. So we have to move forward. We can't be productive if we're doing a paper backup of something that's a proven technology measurement. So is what somebody's doing relevant? And is it time bound? Okay. Because again, with the changing world that we live in, some things either don't need to be done anymore, or they need to be done and put in priority, right? They're no longer the first thing you do every day, or they're no longer the top priority for a monthly or a weekly goal. So again, if you're feeling like there's something missing in your performance management process and you're not quite sure what that might be, I suggest you take even your own job description and can I really say it's a SMART job description? Okay. Are the behaviors and the results that we are expecting of our employees following within those standards? Regardless of how you see your role and the performance management process in your organization, I would say that there is proven that high performing workplaces, those that have relatively low turnover, high production, okay, happy employees, that's a generic term anymore, but people who are pretty satisfied with what they're doing in the workplace, who feel that they're appreciated, who feel that they're contributing. Those things that are in place for a high performing workplace is that you have top management support. Your structures might be different than others, but top management doesn't necessarily mean we're talking the governor of our state here. What we're talking about is in your environment at the top of the food chain. Are they supportive of how performance management is led and how you handle it? I mean, is your environment overall pretty positive? Again, remember there are ebbs and flows. It probably isn't positive every day. Everybody has a bad hair day. Okay. Um, High performing workplaces seek feedback from managers, from peers, even from customers. Ask yourself if you are getting feedback from your employees. And again, I'm not talking about the employee that stands in your doorway and vents for 20 minutes, because you don't really have to put up with that, right? No venting unless you come with a solution. But you can seek feedback. What worked for you? What felt good about this process? And most of you, if you're doing quick one-on-ones or quarterlies or however you do it, probably that's a much more informal discussion, and you probably are getting feedback at that time. Sometimes you're getting feedback that you didn't even ask for, and oftentimes you're getting it in more subtle ways, and you have to be mindful to pay attention to the cues. But you can do it more formally as well. There's nothing wrong with bringing your group together and doing a SWOT analysis, right? What are our internal strengths and weaknesses? What's our external opportunities and threats? People and employees like to be asked. There are little things that you can do to build your culture, and that all ties into managing performance. High-performing workplaces also have usually proper resources and tools. And when I say this, I am not talking about expensive things, okay? There are so many opportunities out there that don't cost money. You have a whole network amongst you. There's 30 people on this call um, that are probably facing the same thing that you're facing, or that in fact have had experiences that would be super good to share, things that work that didn't work, right? You have resources that are out there. There's obviously the internet and a whole host of things, but there are tools out there that don't necessarily cost money, because I get budgets impact what we think we can and can't do. One of the things I would say as a leader that we didn't prepare for, most of us, when we went into that role, is what amount of time we needed to contribute to being a leader. And most of us are working leaders, working managers, working supervisors. So we're still doing all the stuff we used to do, and now we took on this other role, and we're trying to fit it in. Some of this just becomes automatic. It's just repetitive in terms of how we approach every day. And I think that's key to not feeling the burnout and the frustration of performance management. Again, use the tools at hand. And then consistency. I probably say the word consistent too many times in one of these kinds of conversations, but what breaks down your culture and what employees look at when they think about performance management has a lot to do with what they see you do. And so I'll just use this as one example. But if tardiness or being to work on time is a big deal for you, and it is for most of us, and this is true, I never give you examples that haven't happened, okay? I don't make this stuff up. I've lived a long time in HR, so I have some pretty hilarious ones. But here's one that I see frequently. You know, we want everybody there at 9 o'clock. And we have one person who's really a great worker when they get there. The customers love them. They get it. They know it. But they just can't get their tail in the door until 9:10 every day. And if you ask them why, it's, well, the way it works, I can't get my kids out the door before, or whatever, or the school thing. We can't drop our kids off at school until 8:15 and whatever. Okay. That's a legitimate concern. Okay. But what happens if you allow that person to continue to come in at 9:15 or 8:15 or whatever the magic number is, but everybody else is there at 8? Those people who don't have kids are mad because they're being treated differently. People that do have kids and found an alternative and found a solution to this problem are also mad because they figured it out, right? So consistent management practices, that's just one tiny example, but that's a real one. If they're watching you and you're not consistent in how you manage the performance of your staff, and trust me, they all talk, they do. So, and sometimes they don't get it right. So it's important that your behavior and your actions and your comments and your statements are consistent. That's probably one of the hugest takeaways. And again, this isn't anything you don't know, but it's good to be reminded. So, all gloom and doom in the first 10 minutes or so of our process here. But I guess the question is are you failing? Or are you hitting it out of the park with performance management? Or are you just somewhere in between? And I work with a lot of different clients and customers in a lot of different industries. That's what I do now. And I would tell you that most everybody falls somewhere in between, constantly trying to figure out the next and right best step to get them where they will feel good about all the effort and time they put into managing performance. So maybe it's time for you to do that performance review on your process. Look at what's working, what isn't. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as sitting down on a piece of paper and a T. Here's what's working. Here's what I think works for us. Here's not working, right? So that you at least can say, well, I think we're falling short here. We recognize that very rarely have I met anyone who loves the process or the end result of performance management, particularly doing the performance review, but even performance management. HR is always happy because we have documentation, right? And if you've ever been in some sort of a lawsuit or a contentious experience with a former employee, documentation is the CYA part of it, and we'll always tell you to do it. It's important. But what we really want for a happy culture and the most productive culture is for this process to leave our managers and our team members feeling engaged or motivated. And think of it yourself, and when you have been on the receiving side of a performance evaluation, okay? What do you remember about a good one or a bad one? I Again, I always give you honest experiences. And when I was the head of HR for Glacier Bank for about 10 years, and that's been some time ago. And there was another manager that he and I just we worked in different ways, and we really just didn't get along all that well. And I didn't realize it, nor I don't think he did either at the time, that our contentious behavior with each other as senior managers was getting in the way of everybody, and people were almost joking about it, right? Because we'd spar, we'd verbally spar about things when we sat in meetings. And so bottom line is that came up in my performance review early on in my career as the head of HR, and that blew me away because I knew it, but and then I was embarrassed that it took my boss putting it in my performance review to remind me of it. Right? So that I never forgot that. And thankfully he did that. And the guy's name was Bob that I worked with. And we ended up actually figuring out a way to communicate about things much better. And we could laugh about it after a while. But for a while, I think it was a problem, and it got in the way of production. He probably should have taken us both aside and told us to put on the boxing gloves, and he should have done it sooner than my performance review, but thank God he did it then. So we've all had a good or a bad experience. I've had some good ones as well. Think about that with your employees, and remember that when you are in this process, right, again, you have a lot of power at your fingertips there. So what are our options? Well, we can give up performance management and the appraisal process entirely, which is highly unlikely for most of us, although I do know some companies who have done that. You could use a different method, again, in this particular situation, because I think most of you are following along with some state practices. That makes sense, and there's some continuity and consistency in that. You may not be able to use an entirely different method. But you could be thinking about the method that you have, and are you measuring learning inputs or learning velocity? And these are terms that maybe you haven't looked at it in this terminology before. So think of inputs as what has been completed. So did somebody, an employee of yours, complete a course or get a certification or log so many hours in a certain way? Those are inputs, okay? They're good, they're valuable, but with velocity, we're measuring the skills gained, the behavior, the capability, that's growing with that employee. So, we can send someone to school, and let's just use Excel as an example because I'm really bad at it. We can send someone to school, and we're going to pay to send them to 2 or 3 or 4 courses on becoming an Excel expert. What really matters is not that they went to the course, although that's important that they gave the commitment to it, but what did they get out of it? Right? Can they come back now and utilize that information to increase productivity or to solve a problem? So how productive are they? So that's just one example. Think about it this way. Here's another visual for you. Do you want to measure a hospital on how many surgeries they performed? Or do you want to measure the patient outcome from those surgeries? So you could have the employee that's the online wizard and they just go out there and they do it all. They just take this class and sit through this webcast and on and on and on, right? What are they doing with that information? There's input and then there's velocity. So just a different way to look at what we're measuring, okay? We can, as an option, when we're thinking about performance management and the appraisal process, we could provide more guidance and structure for those who conduct evaluations. And I've already preached that, particularly for those who are new to the situation. Nothing, I hate to say this, but as an HR manager, when the word awesome became an overused word, if I saw awesome 5 times in a performance appraisal, I would go back to that manager and say, find a different word. Okay. Number one, awesome for your 60-year-old employee didn't mean the same thing it is that's for your 20 during that time frame. Okay. So give some structure to it. Especially for those who are new to the process. And for those of you who are soldiers who have done this a long time, then you can reach out and help because you kind of know what worked and what didn't work for your organization. There's a lot of terminology in every industry. It's important not to overuse it, banking, I'm a banker. So, there's about a million things, CRA and this on and on and on. Make it real for the employee. Talk about specifics enough to make it so that they can actually identify with the management process and what you're asking of them and how you're helping them to achieve their best. Conversely, you can provide less structure and let the review fit the role and the individual. I don't know as a state libraries whether or not that this works. And I suspect that because you're somewhat of a structured, in my brain, you're structured more. There's certain things that have to be done, and there's an order and a methodology to what you do. Perhaps you need more structure, but in some organizations, less structure seems to work. It's the on your honor system, if you will. But my experience with this has been that you need to have leaders who are strong enough and willing enough to be interactive on a more frequent basis if they have less structure, meaning feedback, that continuous feedback. Clearly, one size doesn't fit all. You may even have different types and personalities of employees within your organization or different departments, right? So you may not need the same structure for someone who's the custodial staff as you do for someone who's your front desk person, just as a visual example. Whatever you do, again, HR speaking here, be sure you're consistent within the role, not the person, the role. So if I'll use banking because it's my area of familiarity, is that if I am doing performance management for the teller line, even though the individuals are different, there are certain consistent standards I need to hold everybody to. Same with the tardy example. Again, one size doesn't necessarily fit all, but if it's working for you, although maybe not the greatest, my suggestion is to move it up the ladder a little bit so that you can, make it a little more valuable. I'm guessing you spend 30 or 40% of your time on leadership tasks that have to do with performance management. And in some cases that might be high, in other cases that might be low. But whatever time your percentage you're spending, you'd like your efforts to be valued and you'd like them to show results. right? Increased productivity, less absenteeism, less turnover. So performance management has a lot to do with all of that. My assumption is that you're not going to give it up, right? Or someone higher up won't let you give it up, even if you'd like to. So it's really important. I mean, it's preachy to say this, but if you don't address performance management, it's a wasted amount of time and exercise that you put a lot of time and effort into. It impacts your culture, it impacts that retention. I think it impacts your output, your service, and your bottom line. I've often wondered, I'll give you another example. I've often wondered, in fact, I've actually contacted the HR manager. I live in Polson, so that's Lake County, and we haul all of our garbage to the dump. Now, I don't know what it means to work at the dump, but I have yet to go there in the 10 years that we've lived here when I have not had the best experience with the people that way you going in and going out. It's so much so that my husband and I both are like, wow, those people are happy every day. They have very little turnover. Um, and they're always, hey, have a great day. What you got today? Just incredible. It's an incredible culture there. And for some of us, you're thinking, well, I don't think I'd want that job, but it's pretty incredible. Something in their culture is working. And I've reached out to the HR manager for Lake County and said, I would really like to know what you do, number one, when you hire them, but how do you keep those people motivated? I mean, they are sitting in a building and they are meeting multiple people, one right after another. I'm sure on certain days it's pretty busy for them. It's not a glamorous job. It's a very people-reaching job, and they do a great job. So something's working right for them, and I'm not sure it's all about performance management, but I believe performance management is a part of that. I think when performance management doesn't work, you will see it reflected in poor quality service. I would also suggest that you give some thought to this. Your culture impacts the processes that you use, right? Well, we just don't do that here, or we don't have time to do one-on-ones, or we don't do quarterly reviews. It's not part of our culture. Or conversely, the process impacts your culture, right? And we're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. Stop for just a second, ask if there are any questions. I don't know if there are, but feel free to jump on me and say, hey, I have a question. Okay. All right. So when I think about what you take away from today, among many things, hopefully, here are some fundamental things that I feel that, and this is the HR person probably speaking out here, but I think every one of you who said, I do to being a supervisor, a manager, a leader, anybody who said, yes, I'm willing to take a higher level role in performance management, you have some fundamental responsibilities. And when you're promoting people or hiring people for these roles, whether they're internal or external, I think this conversation should be had. And I would encourage you to do that. Sorry, you got to have coffee. Every one of you in this leadership role should understand your company employee handbook, what your policies and procedures are. Okay. Most of what we do in guidance of our employees at the fundamental level is what comes out of your employee handbook. It's just the rules of the road, okay? But if your handbook says you will do this, you have a certain grievance policy or you have a certain disciplinary policy, you should know what that is. It's important, okay? You can't, and if you ever go to court, you can't plead ignorance, okay? That doesn't fly. So make sure that you spend some time, making sure that you're familiar with it. You should know about your company, about your organization, the department. Understand what your strategic plans are. What's the budget? how do your operations work? And what's your history? Some of you have rich, rich history, and you should be proud of it. You should share it. It's part of your culture, right? I'm not too familiar with all of your libraries, but I've been in the Missoula one multiple times, and it's growth. And I'm obviously have been in the Polson one. And I was saying, there's so many things there that I didn't even realize existed until I got that introduction. So make sure that that's a form of self-promotion, but it's also a form of let's be proud as employees of what we do. Again, lead by example, be fair and consistent. It's huge. This gets us in trouble all the time, not only from a culture perspective, but just from how managers are perceived. And there's lots of statistics out there, and I didn't bring them today because that's not what we're about. But I can tell you that, and you could ask yourself this question: if you've left a job before, did you leave the company or did you leave the management? Your employees are the same way. Make sure that your employees understand your expectations. Again, do you have job descriptions? Remember that all of our employees, we're all individuals and we learn differently and we absorb differently. So in some cases, discussion, just like what we're doing today, works. To be honest, it's the least effective, but others need to touch it, they need to read it, they need to see it, they need time to absorb it. Not everybody is spur of the moment. Oh, I got that, right? So when you look at your employees and take an assessment of how they learn and how they communicate, you may have to flex how you deliver. And that's really important throughout the whole performance management process. Regardless of how you do it, and maybe you do it multiple ways, I think frequency is important. And again, clearly and concisely. Set the same standards for yourself and live by them. If you say you're going to meet with someone next week, or you say we're going to meet quarterly, then you need to do it. And for more than one reason. Number one, because you set an expectation and you need to live up to it. But secondarily, if you ever have to terminate someone, again, HR speaking here, if you ever have to terminate someone and you didn't do what you said you were going to do as an employer, it doesn't go very favorably for you. Spend the appropriate amount of time accurately providing performance oversight. Again, I said some of you are 30-40% of your day, of your entire job is now performance oversight. For others, if you might have a more seasoned staff, you might feel that it's not as necessary to pulse check them as frequently. But I encourage you to do it regularly because that's what happens. Sometimes the folks that are doing the best job for you are the ones that get the least amount of your time. If you don't, and again, walk the floor, if you will, that's one way to performance manage, management by walking around. But it should not be difficult for you to step away from whatever you're doing and walk the floor and be able to see one or two things that you can compliment your staff on. I bet you don't even have to look for it for most of you. I bet you have staff that you can just say, hey, that was great, or thanks for doing that. I'm not suggesting that you thank people for coming to work on time. I'm not saying that's it. What I am saying is reach out and touch people and give them an attaboy, attagirl, a high five, and be genuine and sincere about it. Okay? Conversely, we're going to talk about what you have to do if you need to redirect someone. But be proactive in providing training and education, whether it's procedural training or just workplace conduct. For those of you who have meetings, department meetings, and I don't know how much of that goes on anymore. Sometimes I like to call that a huddle. Planning for a big meeting seems to be cumbersome anymore from time, but we used to do huddles where I came from. They were 5-minute Monday or Tuesday morning huddles, and they might just be, hey, here's what's going on in our week. Here's who's available this week. So and so is out of the office, so I've asked somebody else to take on this. Or hey, every time we have a huddle, I'm going to give you one reminder of things that we do here. Remember that this is our mission. Remember that this is what we're striving for. So sometimes training can come in small bits and pieces, and that's part of performance management. It doesn't have to be a big event. You know, what you put together just to have me to come to the table for a 2-hour training for all of you and those of you who had to clear your schedule to attend, that's a bigger deal, right? You don't have to do that all the time. You could take this presentation and as one example, and you could spread this out over several months worth of training if you wanted to provide some of it to your staff. And I'd encourage you to do things like that. Hey, let's talk today about the right way to have this conversation. Or I wanted to remind everybody that, um, we don't want to put blame on someone else when someone comes in and says, oh, this didn't happen. Well, and we hear this a lot. Well, I wasn't here that day. I'm not sure who did that wrong, right? We want to train our staff to just step up and not put blame somewhere, but to say, here's how we handle this. Okay, so there's all kinds of training that you can do that doesn't cost money, that's short term, that's the quick tidbits, if you will, and that's a part of performance management too. I want to take a moment on this slide to talk a little bit about the impacts that we have, those things that impact our businesses, our organization, as well as our employees. And I want to make sure that we all recognize that we have control over some of these things and other things we don't. And to that end, we have to know where to focus our energies a little bit. So not in any order here specifically, but let's talk about impacts, because impacts impact how our employees perform and how well they do. Let's start at the bottom on the right there. Let's talk about financial demand. We all know that it's difficult to pay what we'd love to pay for our employees. And so compensation is a big topic always. It's not always why someone works for you or doesn't, but it's definitely high on the list, as we know. And probably a good portion of your employees are working paycheck to paycheck, right? So that impact, of which we have very little control over, impacts how our employees come to work every day. All right. Now, we do the best we can. We provide the best benefits we can. We have a package. We do what we can do. At that point, we recognize that employees, for some, it's easy, and for some, it's not. That doesn't change our expectation and accountability of what an employee needs to do when they walk in the door. So there's a separation there. Because what you'll get, and I've heard this many times, you'll talk to an employee about performance and maybe it's not up to par, and there's a reason, oh, I'm going through a divorce, or my spouse lost their job, or my kid's not doing well in school, or my parents are elderly and I need to help them. I mean, all of which are true and tragic and real things. But what we're doing with performance management is helping them be the best they can be when they walk in our door. Okay. Where your organization is in the life cycle of the organizational business is really an interesting concept. And again, I bring this up because it's important to understand that as we flex and change, so do our expectations sometimes of performance. It doesn't mean we lower our standards, but it does mean we may change them. So if you have a brand new business, there's a lot of adrenaline going on. Everybody's on board. You celebrate every small success. It's going up the chain like this. Pretty soon a business or an organization gets to kind of a crest and they even out. And they go along pretty well, and that's the status quo, if you will, and the things that are impacting you aren't the same as they were down here. But as you know, nothing stays the same, and so a business flows. They're either going to go up or they're going to go down. And that decision about whether you go up or you go down sometimes isn't yours as a manager. It might be your organization at a much higher level. Regardless, you need to be able to flex to move with it. Some businesses find new products, new ways to entice their customers, new services to provide, and they kind of rise up again and go through it all over. other businesses recognize that this is what we do, this is our niche, this is where we're happiest and where we do the best, and we're okay if we kind of level out down here. Doesn't mean we're failing necessarily. It just means that we've chosen a different path. Where you're at in your life cycle of a business may impact how you manage performance, primarily because maybe your expectations change. Maybe your employees have to learn new skills. Maybe they have to be satisfied with a repetitive skill set. Only you know, and it's different for every organization. But give that some thought as you're trying to figure out what you can do to enhance this process. Some organizations have a lot of internal mobility, so if you have employees that are eager to climb the ladder and move upwards, and they learn quick, they move quick, but they're not satisfied in the same position for a long period of time, internal mobility may or may not be where they need to be. Again, it's a little bit about being the right seat on the bus. You have to manage performance and expectations to knowing what's real in your organization. Okay? You can't promise what you know you can't deliver. Level of training and development in every organization is a little bit different. You may not have a lot of impact on this, or you're going to have to be creative on your impact. Funds just might not be available. You'd love to send everybody to this wonderful training, but the fact of the matter is you don't have the funds to do it. So then you're looking for those lesser expensive resources. Remote and hybrid working, I don't know how that impacts this organization, what all of you on the call are, but obviously it can be an impactful situation, and definitely you manage performance differently if somebody is coming in or works from home or does a little of both. All of these things on the right then will impact ultimately retention and worker availability. They say right now that we are with fewer employees to choose from or fewer applicants to choose from. Okay, all the more important that performance management is out there and that you're doing it consistently so that you can retain those key employees and you don't lose them. People used to never leave a job for money, but now they sometimes can be enticed to leave for small amounts of money. Your industry type, the political and social changes, we don't have control over, that we have a new president or a change in administration every 4 years. And for some, that can impact our budgets, what training, what our missions are, et cetera, as you all know. Again, these things impact our workers because it impacts how we can support them and address, things that we'd like to address at times. All of this is tied to your culture and what it looks like. Structure, same way. Some of you are very traditional. There's the boss at the top, and then there's a certain level of management underneath. In some cases, you probably have more managers than you need. In other cases, maybe not enough. But all of these things impact how you are going to help your employees be successful so that ultimately you can be successful as a company. So you might go through as you're doing the analysis on your processes right now and say, well, I think this is where we're short, but I can't do anything about it because, or at this point, I need to not focus on that particular short set because I can't really address it effectively. And just some food for thought for those of you with lots of experience. Maybe you've already given thought to some of these things. With everyday performance management, I still believe that you don't want to wait quarterly or annually to have conversations with your team. And I think that's probably the consensus with most of you. What happens is it falls to the wayside sometimes. We get busy or things happen and it doesn't happen. But I do think that we need to have more conversations more frequently. Again, thank people, recognize when they go above and beyond. Same with redirection, which we have a section following here about disciplinary type items, but don't wait to have a conversation with someone, particularly with newer supervisors and managers, my experience is that, God, I didn't know how to say that to them. Or the same as, I really didn't want to bring it up. It was just one time, and I just assumed that it won't happen again. And pretty soon, before you know it, it's happening frequently. We need to talk about things in the right manner, um, as as often as we need to do it. We don't spank the puppy for having an accident on the carpet 2 weeks after it happens. They don't get it. It's ineffective. So if someone's being tardy and they shouldn't be, you have to have that conversation. If someone's dress code isn't right, you don't wait and hope they never wear it again. Okay? It's got to be when it's fresh. If you witness an interaction between two employees that probably would be better held in a different situation, you need to talk about it. Something that happens, and I don't know about all of you, but I'm a customer service fanatic. And so if I go somewhere and people don't acknowledge me when I walk in the door, or they make me wait while they finish a conversation with their coworker without acknowledging me, I'm frustrated with that. And in many cases, because I'm so fixated on that stuff, I will refuse to go back somewhere. So if you witness that as one example, and you just don't have a conversation with those two employees to say, hey, I just noticed this, we probably can't do this or whatever. We should do that right then and there while it's fresh. It's especially critical if there's a safety issue, and you all know that. But depending upon the situation, performance management is a communication that could be simple. It's conversational. It's just a reminder. Okay. And I'm not suggesting you walk up and embarrass two people in front of other people, and you all know that already. But you don't want to wait until it's 2 and 3 weeks old to have a conversation. It's just not as effective. Okay. And then follow up is really essential as part of performance management, especially when we're talking about substandard performance. Okay. And we'll talk about performance improvement plans as we continue on here. So we're about an hour in. Are we needing a break? Does anybody need a break, or are we good to keep going? If you don't say anything, I'm keeping going. All right, we're going. So I want to move on to a job description. I recognize that you all have a job description. It's probably a format that you're all using that's similar. And I'm not suggesting that you change it. I mean, that isn't you want to follow the norms. Again, you're a state organization, and I get that. But what I wanted to bring to your attention with going over a job description is that there's value in looking at it from a different perspective. Okay. So I'm talking here in this slide about add your logo and company information. Well, it probably already is on your job description, but if you have something really cool that maybe your particular, I'll use Polson just because that's where I'm from. Polson High School is the Pirates. I mean, if you put a pirate logo on your job description or something, or branded it in some way, that builds your culture. Or if you have something in your environment that's unique to your specific community, maybe that's what you could do. I'm not asking you to change a document in its entirety. I'm just suggesting you look at it with a different lens. I suggest that all employees read their job description and sign it. And if it changes, then it needs to be redone. And you may think this is almost redundant, but even if you didn't have them sign it, again, depending upon what your policies are, I would definitely review this description with your employees at least annually, if not more frequently. Okay. I keep the employee signed copy in a personnel file. There's always a little HR stuff going on here. And again, whatever format works within your company or industry. The reason I brought this example here is that there are some things I like about it. And I thought it would be interesting for you to look at it again through a different lens. Notice in the roles and responsibilities, this job description has a summary statement. It's all of 2 sentences. Company specializes in all residential and commercial asbestos services, inspections, abatement, et cetera, et cetera. When you read those two sentences, you understand almost immediately, without a company name on here, what this job is. This is an actual job description from an asbestos abatement company. And I think it's pretty well done. And again, entirely different industry than what you're all in, but it's a picture. When you read this job description, you get a visual in your mind as to what the expectations are for someone who fills this role. This person's going to be on a ladder. They're going to be working with hand tools, power tools, safety tools. They're going to be measuring, cutting. They may be driving. Okay. There's all kinds of things going on here. There's a lifting requirement. That's kind of an obvious one in something like this, but there might be that in yours. Successfully complete a background check, credit check, etc. Because asbestos abatement can be done in state and government offices or schools, nobody that works for this company can have any kind of a record. Okay, so just wanted you to look at it from a different perspective. Look at the job descriptions that you have, and again, try not to think about the people filling them. Think about the job description itself, and make sure that it really is speaking to what you expect that position to complete and do. That way, if you and your employee are aligned on that and they know that and they're reminded of it, then you can start to talk about performance management very specifically. It becomes a little less personal that way. And I'm sure as a manager at some point in time in your career, you've come across the employee that's a little more difficult to manage because they take personal offense to everything you say to them. And then all of a sudden it becomes personal, you know. And that's that consistent practice. Well, you are always telling me this, but you never say this to Susie or Sam. Or why are you telling me that I'm not doing this? You don't tell anybody else. Or you've heard it all. And I'm just giving you examples. But a clear job description is easier to hold people accountable to. Okay. Notice this job description doesn't talk about behavior, personality, or conduct. That's somewhat of a separate issue here. And in some positions might have a higher, there might be, something to the effect of the ability to collaborate or work in a close environment or, have multiple bosses or whatever. I just think this is a good job description for a visual. And again, I encourage you to look at yours. Sorry.
Cindy, as you take a sip of water or whatever, and you may get into this a little bit more specifically with like performance improvement. But we had a question about an employee who might refuse to sign their job description. And like, how does that work, just with internal policy and procedure, if that isn't the expectation that your organization has already?
That's a great question. I'm going to jokingly say you probably made the wrong hire. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't know why someone would not want to sign it, but I suppose that could happen. I think then what I would do, and again, this is the HR and me talking, but I would say, you don't have to sign something. However, I'm going to make note that we discussed this. You are free to, and when we discussed it and what we discussed, you're free to respond in any way. If you have questions or comments, I'm happy to hear them. However, this is how you will be measured in performance. So you can acknowledge that they don't want to sign it, but it doesn't change the fact that this is what you hired them to do. So it's that fine line between, who holds who hostage, so to speak, right? And I don't know what the state does in terms of that. Almost every company I work for, in terms of consulting, and even when I was a practicing HR person, has somebody sign the job description. But I can tell you that, you know, you can write somebody up, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and they can refuse to sign it. It doesn't change the write-up. Okay, the write-up exists, and it was, you know, and it was delivered. If you expect that to happen, my recommendation is to have more than one person present so that there's kind of a corroboration of it. But hopefully that helps answer it. You know, it'd be hard to understand why someone wouldn't want to sign a job description, but I'm sure it happens. Let's talk about individual development plans as part of the process of managing people and helping them to be the best they can be. Not a lot of companies do this process on a consistent basis, and I think the reason is because they think it's too cumbersome. And again, for those of you who are working managers, you're probably rolling your eyes at me right now going, yeah, right, one more document you want me to do, and I get that. But I would tell you that having an individual development plan, which some of you probably have for yourself anyway, even if it's not formal, helps an employee to understand what the expectations are and what the role might be in the organization. So does every employee have to have an IDP? No, probably not. I would start, if you thought this was a good process, maybe with anybody who's a supervisory role and up. Okay. It should be aligned with company goals. So if I come to work for you and my goal is to be the director someday, I need to be realistic about what that looks like, what qualifications I need, and whether or not that's even possible. I mean, how does that role get filled in your organization? Just as one example. So in this case, this one's a little extreme, but I wanted to kind of throw it out there. This person's a accounts payable clerk, but they want to go obviously into a higher level position. They're going to need to have some management skills. They're going to need to know more about, accounting standards, the promotion, what training are they going to need, and what's the cost. You know, realistically, we're not going to send someone to college to the tune of $5,600. I get that. Now, there are companies who do this, but that's probably not where we're at. But maybe, like, I'll use HR. When I first went into HR, I went into HR I fell into the job actually, but I went in and I started doing payroll, and pretty soon then I started doing the onboarding for a new employee, and then I started recruiting, and pretty soon I was in charge of benefits or whatever. If I was going to manage a large company's HR, one of the things I wanted to do was get my certifications, which is, my licensing. So that would have been my goal, is to complete my the two certifications that I have. And they did cost money, and it took me a few years. I paid for one of them myself, and the company that I worked for at the time supported payment of the other one. But again, that's how I might put that in there. The training I need is, number one, I might need years of experience, or I need training and benefits. And I can do a lot of those trainings online at a pretty minimal cost, right? If I'm going to manage people, I probably need some additional communication training, or in just the kind of training we're talking about today. What things do I do to be a better person at managing performance of others? So this isn't a bad document. This is a good document, and it doesn't have to be as expansive as the one I've presented to you. But what you can do with this is it helps align everybody and keeps them on track. And it sets realistic expectations for somebody who comes in who really didn't realize what it was going to take to move forward in the organization. So IDPs are a pretty valuable tool. They can be part of your quarterly, it could be part of your annual. It's not something you visit every day. Most times the goals that we set for ourselves are probably over the next year to 2 years, right? I do think when someone has the IDP in place and you've agreed upon it, you've collaborated on it, that that person's level of engagement rises, which I think means that their productivity rises and their level of initiative rises. So instead of sitting back waiting for you to ask them to move those books or create this file, they do it on their own because they're looking forward, thinking about what we need to do. And we all know that the employees that we love to have are those that will take initiative to get something done instead of waiting to be asked. I think an IDP helps spur that on. You can set some goals that aren't attainable or that maybe can't be attained by virtue of changes in funding, or, you know, if you have a major management change. I'm working for a company right now that is in a manufacturing situation, and it's an acquisition, and it's 2 years old, and the company wanted everybody to stay when they acquired it because they had lots of expertise, but they're having some struggles at the end of 2 years because the changes that the new owners want to make are pretty significant, and the people that have been there for a long time are resisting the change. Okay, so they tried to sit down with the individual key employees and say, here's what we want to see in the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and here's what we're willing to invest in you. We want to send you to this school. We want to get certified in this, et cetera, et cetera. It remains to be seen, but what's happening is their main manager is the one having the most trouble. And whether or not that person lasts is still kind of up in the air. I think if that person quits, there'll be an exodus of a few others because they're a small, close-knit group, and that can really upend a company, right? If you lost 3 of your key employees right now, you'd be hurting, right? It isn't impossible to replace them, and you probably can get the job done. But sometimes this IDP plan that they set for the manager of my example was really intended to say, here's what we're going to do for you, and here's why we're doing it, and here's how it can happen, in hopes that they would not resist the change as much as embrace the investment. Again, I can't tell you that it's successful yet because I really don't know, but that's another way to use this. When I say cream rises to the top, I do think if you show an investment in your employees and it's actually a document that is a living, breathing thing, so to speak, I think sometimes you'll see people that you didn't expect to see rise to the top. You know, someone believes in them, someone's willing to invest in them, and it may be in small doses and in small ways, but I think that that's a true investment in performance management. I want to switch gears just quickly here, and I want to talk about some different methods and processes that you can go through. Again, I recognize that you probably already have a standard format right now, and I'm not suggesting that you change it. But if in fact you're not as comfortable with that format, here are some ideas that you might be able to incorporate. Sometimes you can incorporate them in the annual process. Other times you can incorporate it as part of your continuous oversight and your one-on-ones and your quarterlies. And there's some pros and cons here, and that's why I want to bring this up. You know, sometimes when we evaluate people, and again, this is now on that more often on the annual appraisal, if you will, we do that 1 to 5 rating, okay? Or we do a checklist. And sometimes we do a comparative ranking. The 1 to 5 is the most common, and I'm okay with that. But if you rank everybody a 3, I need to understand what 3 means. So, and then for consistency's sake, everybody should understand what 3 means. And how many 5s do you have? Excuse me. If everybody in your organization is awesome and a 5, where are they going? And how do you keep them motivated with that? Most all of us would like to think that we're above average, but if we're honest with ourselves, even if we're doing self-evaluations on ourselves, we truly know where we fall short, right? It's rare to find someone who's a 5 straight across the board. Conversely, probably not a 1 either. If you have somebody who you're ranking at a 1 at an annual performance review, you probably haven't done what you needed to do throughout the time frame before that. 1s don't belong in your organization unless it's truly due to something that you missed, i.e. a crucial skill that they never had to begin with and didn't get it or can't get it, right? Ones are non-performers, and those ones are taking up 95% of your time. And I'm not being cruel here. A person who's a 1 in one organization can be almost a 5 in another one. They might just not be right fit for what you have going on in that position. Checklists are good. Not many people use them anymore because you have to look for words and statements, you know. But comparative ranking, I wanted to just address this. I think sometimes in our brains and our minds, even if we don't do it officially, we rank our employees in order of best to poorest performance. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you use it appropriately. If you've got 5 employees and you've got Susie's at the top with a 5 and you've got Billy at the bottom with a 1, what you should be looking at is what are the qualities and the skill sets that Susie brings to the table that means she is a 5. And are those the same qualities and skill sets that Billy doesn't have as a 1, so to speak? And so how can you get Billy up the ladder, right? We don't want to be, sometimes that gets confused with that's my favorite employee, okay? Not accusing any of you of doing that, but I'm just saying that can happen. 360 reviews are not frequently done except for at more often at a leadership level, and they're dangerous, so be careful. They're really effective as long as they're used right. This is about getting feedback from peers, other managers, even direct reports. So if someone was, when I was head of HR for Glacier Bank, I had a staff of 3 or 4 at the time. If my boss had done a 360 and he should have asked them for some feedback. He should have asked my counterpart managers. He should have asked people that I work with, maybe you know, in a different department, or people who are part of the admin team with us, right? And then you gather that profile of information, which should be primarily upon the performance, the technical skill, that kind of feedback. Oftentimes what happens with 360s that I see is that then some of the behavioral stuff starts to surface. And that's not all bad, but how you give that information to someone is important, okay? You should never go back if you're doing a 360 and say, well, Susie said you do this, right? Sometimes it's obvious who said it, but let's not point fingers and create a problem. Let's use that information in a way that is constructive. So be careful about your wording and how you share. Again, they're pretty complex to do, and I've worked in organizations where they use them, and they can be effective. They can really highlight strengths, which is great, and kind of really pinpoint areas that need to be addressed. But as a high-level manager, I expect to take the hard news along with the good news, but some of your employees don't, they aren't quite in that same mindset. So again, be careful if you use these. Here's the one I really like, and here's one that I would tell you could really work no matter what format you use. So, and we do this, but we don't necessarily identify it quite the way this is. Take this example. This is an office manager, office reception type position. So what we've done is we've really identified what it means to be a true 5 or a 4 or a 3 or a 2 or a 1, okay? So I like this because if you're doing a numerical rating right now, you should be able to say, what does 3 mean? Okay, look at that. An outstanding person in this role is positive, they're cheerful, whether it's in person and on the phone, they have good communication skills, they're organized, they're efficient, they take initiative, they see something that needs to be done and do it without being asked, they're able to work independent, and they're accurate. Okay. Whereas a satisfactory employee is pleasant, they're fairly organized, but they need direction on projects and not sure quite how to handle newer situations. They don't necessarily take initiative because they are waiting for you to guide them or say, here's next step. Somebody who's a 2 is proficient, meaning they get the call answered and they probably get it to the right person most of the time. Maybe they don't listen well enough in order to get it to the right person. They're organized, they keep a neat and clean area, they make sure the coffee's made or whatever it is, but clearly are waiting for you to guide them. I love this because it really discusses in a more detailed way the difference between a 1 through a 5. So depending upon what format you're using now, you can incorporate this concept in that, right? And this is especially important when you have somebody who's been in a position for maybe longer than a year or 2, and they're static in that position. So they want to raise every year. They want to be recognized. They want to feel good about what they're doing, but really they're not rising with the position. They're not having the position be at its highest level. Giving specifics like this is really helpful. So again, you're all welcome to have this presentation in its entirety in the format. So if this is important to you or you see something you like, you'd be able to go back and find it. We make some common errors as people who do evaluations, and this is not just at the annual review, but also when we're doing our ongoing and continuous performance management. And here are a few ways that we do it. We always have a tendency to judge someone a little more favorably if they're like us, okay? And again, small towns especially, you'll see this. Well, we're on the baseball league together, we bowl together, or we go to the same church, or whatever it might be. So automatically there's this common rapport that we build, and we have a tendency to allow that to impact how we manage performance. Sometimes on the actual annual process, we rate everybody in the middle. We just don't want to have any high performers, and we don't want anybody to think they're not doing a good job, so everybody's average. Okay, and not everybody is the same, and we know that. Bias is huge. It kind of is that similar to me effect, but oftentimes we don't realize that we're doing it based on our own personal values or beliefs or experiences that we've experienced. So then that impacts us a little bit on how we have others. What's worst of all when we have errors is that we don't get the whole review process done, or we don't meet with people, we don't give them feedback, and then suddenly nothing has happened for a long period of time. It's really hard to go back. We should evaluate our employees not relative to each other necessarily, but more on the job criteria. Or sometimes we have first impression errors, and that if they're unfavorable especially, then that distorts how somebody is managed and judged in future actions. Sometimes on the annual review especially, we forget what happened for the whole year when we're looking at past performance, and we only think about what happened in the last 6 weeks. Okay. Same with the halo effect or horn effect. Everybody is high in one area or low in one area. So, and we all like to think we don't do this, but we're products of our own environment. So it's really important to make sure that we didn't allow any of this to get in the way of of managing performance. It's a fine line that I'm talking about here. I mean, it's not personal. The business of business is not personal, yet it becomes very personal to us, for a lot of different reasons. Number one, we spend a lot of time with the people we work with. Number two, we're, in some cases good friends, and in other cases, we have goals of our own that we're trying to meet. And so we let it become personal. When someone doesn't live up to the expectation that we think we have for them, or they let you down in some way, we have a tendency to let that really impact us in our entire judgment and not isolated to the incident or the product. If somebody makes an error and it's a costly error, that's glaring, right? And in some cases, those errors can result in termination. I'm not suggesting that they wouldn't, but I am saying that you look at the whole employee and you put that in perspective. I wanted to talk a little bit specifically about proximity bias. So this especially became noticeable when COVID hit and people went to remote status. And I kind of alluded to it in the prior slide, but when we think that we're not biased by proximity, I guarantee you we can be, and most of us are. Sometimes you have workers that are hybrid, or the difference even between a full-time worker and a part-time worker. That part-time worker that you see every day, that you sit in the lunchroom with and eat lunch with or go get coffee with, that might be different than the person who only comes in 2 days a week. Okay, you have a different relationship, and that's expected. But when you're managing performance, you have to put that to a small perspective. Some of you have the same physical work location. In some cases, some of you are managers, maybe of people in different locations. You might also be on different floors, depending upon your organization, or in different time zones. So just know that proximity is there. You could have people that, and when I was in banking, this was really noticeable because bankers are supposed to go out and meet and greet the community. And so those employees who showed up at every chamber event and went to and volunteered for everything, they got noticed more quickly. I guarantee you they did. That's in part probably why they did it, right? But suddenly you have a different knowledge of that person. And so it makes a difference. You want to evaluate the person, but it's relative to the role they play. So what's best, narrative or numerical? When you're doing some feedback for your employees, and this isn't just about the annual review, this is about your continuous conversations, your one-on-ones, your daily feedback. There are pros and cons to narrative as well as the numerical. And I would tell you right up front, the National SHRM Organization did a study just here in January or February, 1,600 participants, and they said that they all like narrative the best. I think employees like narrative because it provides them generally with a little bit more detail. Again, if you just have a number without any context, it's kind of lacking. So narrative adds depth to that rating, just like on that bars scale I showed you. It's also easier to identify special events and thank someone or recognize them for a job well done. Hey, you put together this training and you did it from start to finish. Job well done. Narrative allows you to give better examples as a rule, but there can be some bias. Narrative could be incomplete or lacking in clarity. And I see this because people are not quite sure what to say, especially when they're trying to get someone to step up. It's easy to give recognition and praise, or easier than it is to get someone to step up to a different level. Whereas on a numerical side, like as I said, who knows what a 3 really means? And if you use a scale of 1 to 10, it's probably even more different. But if you have a lot of people to supervise and do reviews and do performance management with, narrative or numerical is faster, right? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Okay, so it's a little more efficient. Okay. Employees particularly like the numerical one if they think the number is tied to compensation. Meaning, if your review score is very much a part of how much you're going to get a raise for, they love numbers. And we're going to talk about that as well in just a little bit. Okay, here's some helpful hints, and we'll go through this as we have time. But some of this, again, you know. I love when you use specific examples. This is whether or not you're having that quick doorway conversation or whether you're writing a performance review. When it's appropriate, use the numerical data, okay? Absenteeism, tardiness, numerical, accomplishment of something. We want you to be at this level by June of this year. Okay, there's a deadline, there's a date, there's a numerical piece there. But be sure you're measuring actual duties and the competencies, the key result areas that you set, again, tied to the job description. For yourself, don't sit down and write all your performance reviews out in one setting. Give yourself time to do it right, okay? And this is a common error that I see made when people, if you have them all due at one time, you wait until December and they're all due by January 1, and you've got 4 or 5 or 6 to do, and you're already busy, and you try to write them all at once. I guarantee the first one is probably way better than the last one. And honor yourself and your employee. Have the right environment to have any kind of conversation, all right? Particularly the correctional kind. Nobody wants to have that happen in the middle of, the doorway in front of other employees. That doesn't mean you need to, have that closed door conversation and everybody wonders what the heck's going on. But some mediocre, medium that works, that is best for you and your team. I don't recommend going to lunch to do your performance review. Okay. And I know that that's done frequently at higher levels, but honestly, that's not the place or the time. You worked hard to do it. Somebody worked hard all year to get the job done. And if it's correctional, it's especially tough with all of the distractions. But even if it's a very positive review, it takes away from the impact of saying, thank you, job well done, with the server coming and bringing you this, that, and the other thing. So again, I see it done a lot, but I don't recommend it. Okay. If you are redirecting behaviors, regardless of whether this is at the annual or during the course of the entire, year, be solution-based. Okay. So if you're talking to the employee who just had a problem conversation with a customer, you're going to bring them aside and say, hey, I couldn't help it over here. What happened? And I have a suggestion for you about how you might have said that differently. Okay. Give them a solution. Give them an option whenever possible. Focus positively on delivering results. Okay. Here's the thing. Every once in a while, like I said at the beginning, there's somebody in your organization you want gone. We get it. I get calls as an HR consultant that says, hey, how do I get rid of so-and-so, right? That's a whole nother discussion. But what I would tell you is, in general, we want people to succeed. We saw something in them when we hired them, and we know that they probably have it in them. And if we start at the beginning and we continue to coach upward, if they don't succeed, it won't be because we both didn't try. So focus on positive delivery and results. When you're giving feedback, describe the behavior, but don't judge it, okay? Avoid emotions, assumptions, predetermined conclusions. Meaning, so you've got someone who just gets to work and they're dragging, and they're just, they're almost asleep at their workstation. And in your heart of heart, the reason it is because they have a second job at night and they're not getting home in time and they're not getting enough rest, okay? So what I'm telling you not to do is don't talk about that. What you talk about is, hey, I can't help but notice that you are not engaged when you are here. We're all adults here, so they need to figure out, what's going on. They need to figure out how they're going to manage it. And I don't open up that conversation to say, well, do you know what you're doing, that why you're so sleepy at work? I mean, I don't want to go down that path necessarily. But if you do, and it happens, say, look, you're going to have to make a decision here about the importance of what you do for us. We're your primary employer. Perhaps you can't work as many shifts. I don't know. You'll have to decide what's right for you. But what I do know is when you're here, I expect you to be productive. And again, that's kind of a quick and dirty, but don't just assume that you know what the problem is, number one. And if you're sure, don't allow it to guide your solutions as a general rule. You want to be helpful. You don't want to look down your nose. Focus on specifics. And then obviously do the documentation. You need to keep ongoing records. Be careful what your records say. Again, this is not HR 101 here, but be careful. Don't put your opinions in your records. It's just about the facts. So let's talk a little bit about progressive or constructive discipline, because it's a part of performance management, and sometimes it's the most difficult. The whole goal in disciplining or redirecting employees is to have to do it in the first place. So we want to do it right. We want to do it effectively. We want to minimize the impact with still getting the best results we can. Okay. Progressive is multi-step. I think we know that. I'd like you to view discipline as corrective rather than punitive. There are times when punitive probably fits. But we're focused on changing behavior rather than punishing it. Okay, there is a process here, and everybody is entitled to due process. And obviously, safety first. So if two people are fighting, physically going at it, that's kind of non-negotiable, right? And safety first. Safety for them, safety for the other employees, safety for your clients, your customers, etc. You're going to react to that differently than you are two people who had an argument in the lunchroom. Again, remember that things you said I do too. Make sure you understand your code of conduct. I'm guaranteeing that the state has one, and your handbook, there's some sort of behavioral conduct or rules or guidelines. Make sure that your staff understands them explicitly. That's the new hires and the current staff. Again, it's oftentimes a good reminder. Social media is one we remind our staff on a lot. We can remind them about what's acceptable language and behavior from time to time. Be consistent. And again, how you treat this, your employees are watching you, and that's a matter of performance management. I would like everybody to have an open door communication, and we wish that that would be the way for everyone. It's easy sometimes, it's not so easy other times, but your employees need to be able to know they can come and talk to you as long as it's constructive. I'd say stop right in the middle of here, because I don't know what your handbook says, but you do. So whatever your handbook says about disciplinary processes, that guides the tone of our entire conversation. For the most part, progressive discipline or constructive discipline that's in multi-step format seems to be the order of the day for everybody. But if you are in doubt, you should seek, assistance from your manager or the HR folks or an attorney when it's necessary. Here are the things you consider as a general rule of thumb when you're talking about redirecting someone's performance or behavior. What's the offense? What's the problem? Is there a policy that it's impacting? Is there a law that surrounds it? What are the circumstances? And who is the employee? Okay, and then lastly, how have you treated these problems in the past? Now, I've spent the entire 2 hours telling you, treat everybody the same. There are times when you might do something a little different And the example I'm going to use here is you have an employee who's your star performer. You've never had a problem with them in any way, shape, or form. All of a sudden, something comes up and they screw up in some way. Okay, as long as it didn't break the law, as long as it's not a violation of violence or bullying or theft or major issues, it's possible that because of the fact that that employee's past performance has been so stellar, that you might not impose the same level of punishment. The key here is not to ignore it, but to address it appropriately. So hopefully that makes sense. Here's lots of different handlings of discipline. And again, go to whatever your state handbook says. But generally speaking, there's conversation. It's informal. I still document those conversations in an informal way. If somebody tells a joke in the lunchroom and it's inappropriate, it might not be a horrible joke, but it's inappropriate. I might just pause and have them stop by and say, hey, that joke probably is funny at the bowling alley or out off premise or wherever, but I think that we probably shouldn't have that type of joke here. Remember, we have all different kinds of people here, customers here, different ages, different backgrounds. Just want to make sure you understand that. That's just a conversation. Okay. I'd probably still make a note of that. But if something happens again, then I'm probably going to say, hey, we talked about this, you remember? And now I hear it again. So unfortunately, this is a warning, just an oral one, but nonetheless, I want you to be aware I'm very firmly saying we can't do this. Another example might be people who are tardy might have an oral warning, or somebody left the lights on or left the door open or unlocked one time. Serious. Lights on might not be so serious, but the unlocked door could be fairly serious. Okay. Again, your culture, your organization, there are things that are non-negotiable and some that are a little more flexible. Then there's the written warnings. You could have more than one. You could have a third chance, a final chance, a last chance. Some organizations use suspension with or without pay. Some have disciplinary actions as a result of an investigation. This might be for someone who says, I've been bullied. This is a hostile work environment. I was harassed, that kind of thing. Somebody is targeting me for retaliation, all these things. So those are all performance issues and have to be addressed. And then ultimately discharge, where someone is terminated. It's in Montana, if you're in your probationary period, discharge can be done without cause, but otherwise, if you're past your probationary period, you have to have cause to discharge. And again, this is not a legal clause or HR, but it is important that you don't make these decisions on your own and that you're aware of that. Okay. If you're getting to the point where someone you think needs to be, formally addressed, I would ask you to seek assistance from your manager or HR or someone. Let's make sure you're looking at it through a clear lens and that you've done everything you said you were going to do. So let's
Cindy,
talk about it. Yes.
we had a question about the informal actions, the oral warnings. How would you document that? And would you have the employee sign off on that?
Great question. Informal, that conversation in the doorway, it's not something that I ask the employee to sign. It's more that I've documented that we had this conversation, and I probably have it in the employee file, but it's not, it's more as a so I don't forget that it happened, or that if I had to call upon it, I would know when it happened. Okay. And again, it's not a formal, everybody does it a little bit differently. So in my world, I probably would have a file for that employee, and I might just it might be a sticky note. We just talked about this, heard this joke, right? That kind of thing. Or something, hey, you left the lights on the other night, or left the door unlocked. We have a checklist for closing procedures. I want to make sure you're following that checklist. I would document that And, you know, I talked to Susie about this on March 17th or whatever. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And the reason I'm so paranoid about that, again, it's the HR in me, is that if you ended up terminating someone, you want to, it's hard to go back and remember what happened in what order and when and the context. So just having that documentation is just so much easier to be able to go back to it. Okay. And for those of you who do annual reviews, you can put good things in this. I'm using it right now as an example of a corrective measure, but you know, it's a lot easier to go back and summarize someone's past year's experiences and behaviors and successes if you have something to go back to. So talking about performance improvement plans, everybody, this is kind of a new buzz thing. We never used to call them anything. We might have done them, but now it's more formal. This is typically a document or a plan that you put together for someone who has a performance issue, meaning they're not meeting expectations. Either they are getting if you're in the accounting department, they're not balancing, or they're not getting the payables and receivables done appropriately. And so we need to address the fact that you're not meeting expectations. It's very specific. And typically performance improvement plans should have a very strict timeline. This is not ongoing. This is not for the rest of your life. And it requires that you have some feedback and some meetings as a general rule, because it's action oriented. Okay. So there's some definitive measurements that need to be tied to it in order to be successful and to go away. And you could have this document without other corrective action, or it could be part of corrective action, you know. Okay, so here's an example, and again, just one of many. But I want to stress here that performance improvement plans are for a skill set deficiency or a production deficiency. That's how they're best used. This is not a document that you use because someone is having an attendance issue. Okay, an attendance issue or a tardiness issue, as an example, is like, that's not negotiable. Your shift starts at 8 o'clock, okay? There is not training that's required to get you here at 8 o'clock. There may be some things that person needs to do in order to get there at 8 o'clock. The example I used about, I can't drop my kids off at school until 8:15. Well, look, you need to find pre-morning daycare arrangements. Call a neighbor, figure out how you can share this responsibility with a friend, a parent, a relative, and however. We understand it's stressful. We've all been there. But this is not a performance improvement plan. That's a conversation that's documented because it's item specific and it's not a learning curve. PIPs are best used if there's a learning curve. It could be used if there's a behavioral issue, meaning, you know, the way you act in our meetings we think it's because you don't understand the nature of the business. Now, again, you don't use a PIP for somebody who's rude. Okay, again, those are non-negotiable items. But you're not balancing. So how are we going to help you balance? Maybe we're going to assign you a mentor. Maybe we're going to have someone check your balancing every day. Maybe we're going to have you take a class. Maybe it's an online thing. Maybe we're going to restructure your role temporarily in order to break this down into smaller pieces or components. That's what a PIP does. Okay. Key component here. Some things should take 30 days, 2 weeks, 30 days. Something a little more complex might take 60 days, but a PIP should never go beyond 90 days as a general rule. If you've got somebody who isn't progressing within 90 days, they're probably in the wrong job. Doesn't mean they're the wrong employee for your company, just means they're probably in the wrong role. Okay. The other thing is the reason it's important to have follow-up and meetings with them is you don't just hand somebody something and say, okay, go for it. We're going to help you get there. We're going to make sure that we all stay on track. We're going to meet weekly or bi-weekly, whatever. But if you say you're going to meet with someone, you must do that. If you fail to hold up your end of the bargain as the employer, and then down the road you want to terminate this person, that can be a problem. So again, this is a document that manages performance that's meant to be a helpful document. This is meant to be a document that says, here, we're going to lift you up, we're going to coach you, we're going to help you grow and develop. And again, this is a worthwhile document. You've already invested in somebody. Remember what it takes to hire somebody, the cost of hiring, getting them trained, getting them on board. As you know, nobody steps in the door and is 100% competent. So if this person is doing it and their attitude and their engagement level and everything is positive, but they're just not meeting expectations, help them get there. There's 100 of these documents out there. I just showed you one. I wouldn't overuse this document. I think this document is helpful in the situation I described. I don't think it's what you go to. I don't think you should cloud the file with a bunch of documentation. If somebody is skipping a step that they know how to do, that's a disciplinary or redirection discussion different than a performance improvement plan. Just because they're in a hurry and they don't want to do that other compliance check, or they're not doing the safety check, or they're skipping a step, but they know the step and they know how to do the step, that's not a performance improvement plan in my mind. Does that make sense to everybody? I think it does. So, okay, couple last things here. We've all had mentors in our world, and I've been fortunate to have more than one, but one in particular said, here are some rules of the road that you could live by that will guide you no matter what. No surprises unless it's a gift. If you go into that annual performance review and the things that you discuss with that employee are a complete surprise to them, or they've never heard it before, then you haven't done your job doing continuous performance oversight. No surprises unless it's a gift. Bring me flowers and chocolate every day, but don't tell me something bad that I wasn't aware of that's been going on for a year. Anticipate the behavior and get ahead of it. That's, have those difficult conversations in a civil way, but make sure that you're paying attention. Know that behavior that goes unchecked is then condoned. If Susie comes in late and nobody says anything, then I guess that means we can all come in late. Don't assume anything. Avoid management by telepathy. You can't go to someone and say, even though it might be obvious to you, I just assumed you got this. Don't do it. It's ridiculous and redundant to have to repeat it sometimes, and it's irritating because you know they did. But as a leader in a business environment, you don't assume anything, and know that perception becomes reality. So here's a few things we could discuss in our final moments, and I'm happy to stay on longer. I don't know if your performance reviews are aligned with pay increases, but if they are, ever more important in my mind that they are very specific. For some of you, you're wondering whether it's more important to have the skill sets or whether it's more important for the people to play well with each other. And I would tell you that it's about both. Because that super skillful person who's a pot stirrer is a problem for you. So it's okay to address the behaviors and the words and the gossip and all that stuff. Again, be specific. If you're spending 95% of your time doing the fixing and the overseeing, but it's only with 5% of your staff, then you need to manage that performance more effectively so that you can, and when I say that, it's not a criticism, I mean, you need to address it immediately. Don't let 5% of your staff take 95% of your time. Make sure that the expectations you have in your culture and your environment, the non-negotiables are clear. Make sure that what you're all working towards, the strategies and your goals, that it's clear. Be consistent. And if you don't feel like there's consistency going on, ask yourself what's getting in the way. Is it you or is it them? And don't procrastinate the tough conversations. If you have trouble with those tough conversations or the wording, write the verbal ones, script them, write down the bullet points that you know you need to address. It will keep the personal, that me against you, defense, offense mood. If you write them down, say, these are the things we need to discuss. That's very helpful. Okay. I'm happy to take any questions now. I recognize we're at time. And again, I'm more than willing to stay on as long. I'm more than willing to, that's my contact information. Any of you are more than willing to get a hold of me at any time. I'm happy to have discussion. I'll turn it back to Kara and if there's questions or comments or thoughts. Anybody?
Thank you.
Are you awake?
Oh, there's been a lively discussion in the chat about people's perspectives on evaluation processes and yeah.
Okay,
This was
good.
very well appreciated. Lots of thanks coming in. Any final questions for Cindy?
Well, know that I'm available anytime. Again, I would not want you to go sit through this for 2 hours and then have things that are unclear or just didn't make sense and you didn't want to speak up. So feel free to share my contact information.
And we posted the slides to the event in Aspen for those of you who would like to review the slides. And Colette also posted in chat the evaluation form. Your continuing education credits have been entered for those in attendance. Thank you for attending. And Colette also wanted everyone to know that a course version of this webinar will be available soon in MSL Learn for those who want to earn credit for that self-paced course. The recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel shortly. And again, thank you, Cindy. That was so much excellent information. We really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay. Take care, everyone.